Hi there, I'm Maggie Forciedo and welcome to the FeelCast. I'm joined in studio by Edwina Mensah-Husselmann, a Namibian clinical psychologist and founder of Geluk Psychology Services with over 15 years experience in the field. Edwina, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Hello, Maggie. It's great to be with you here in the studio talking about mental health.
Edwina, today's topic is inner critic. What is inner critic?
It is basically your inner voice. We all have that inner voice that is critical, judgmental, negative, and this voice governs your view of yourself, how you perceive yourself, and how others in your head perceive you as a person. And the inner voice is very important because it governs our thoughts, and our thoughts steer the direction of our being and of our lives.
So it's basically also like, what you think of what others are thinking of you.
Yes, you are so self-conscious, like we all are, because a basic human need is to have that sense of belonging and acceptance from other human beings, because we are social beings.
Yes.
And we want to fit in, and we want to survive, and we want to just be good enough as a person and have a good life, and we get worried about it, that we will be left behind, that we will be rejected, and that we will not appear as enough, as worthy to be human. But we forget by default, by just being human, you are already worthy enough. And we know that, but we cave under the pressure of our life experiences, of being rejected, of being hurt, of being disappointed, and that fuels an unhealthy inner voice, which we call the inner critic.
Yes. Now, where does it come from?
Childhood. Psychologists love childhood. The foundation starts with your genes in the brain. You don't come as a clean slate, as people would like to believe. You have a unique genetic composition, which informs your personality, which is your traits and also your belief systems, and your behavior that can be activated. So in the environment, we learn, we add on to our basic genetic system. So the inner voice, especially the inner critic, comes from our parents or our primary caregivers in childhood. And as children, we pick up on the attitudes and the beliefs of the parents they have about themselves, how they view themselves, and how they view us. And it informs us of who we are from a very young age. And we internalize that. The inner critic especially also comes from peers, our friends when we are young, and the feedback that they give us. And because the brain likes to be in survival mode, it registers mostly negative things. That's why we do not promote negativity and negative linguistics in our profession, because the brain radars and senses for all negative information to survive. So when we get negative feedback from our parents or those who rear us as children, or our peers, our friends, teachers, who's very critical, negative, and give destructive or harmful feedback, intentionally or unintentionally, we internalize those messages that we receive, and we start to believe it, especially when it is repeated several times, and also when we fail young. Now you will fail as you start to learn to walk. you stumble,
Exactly,
and you need to
yeah.
get up. And we are often then shamed or ridiculed or mocked or put down when we fall, when we fail, and then we start to believe that we can't and we're not worthy enough.
So that kind of like gets stuck in the brain, and you just continue living that life in, feeling that I'm not worthy, I'm not, good enough, and things
Yes,
like that.
exactly. So at first you don't believe it or you doubt it, but the longer it goes on and the more
So it
you
has to kind
receive
of
that
like
feedback.
has to be done like repeatedly for it to get just like
Yes,
stuck in there.
yes. And we differ as human beings, maybe the first time even, but I would say it should at least be more than once for the brain to fixate on it, because that is what the brain does, and to recognize it. Okay, this is real. This is a
Yes.
reality,
Yes.
and then I start to believe it.
And then how does inner critic link to one's self identity?
Your inner voice feeds your image of yourself, and it feeds your feelings, and it feeds your behavior and who you are and who you perceive yourself to be, through the thoughts that you have internalized from young and have built upon that, and the messages you received from other people who are very dominant, who are very critical, who are very perfectionistic, who is authoritarian, disciplinarians, especially those people and the bullies and so forth. And this throughout life develops this self-image and also your body image. We know it's important. We have put our best foot forward for the nation because we know those impressions count.
Yes.
And we know that we are judged on it. And it is important, but it is not defining who we are.
Yes.
We should never forget that.
Now, what about self esteem? How does it affect that?
I've coined the term self-esteem as your mental health immune system. The self-esteem is there to preserve the self so that the self is intact and it's generally well and healthy and functioning, and you generally have a good life. Not a perfect person and not a perfect life either. So the inner critic can, with those negative messages, it's like a nagging voice, keep on breaking down your self-esteem. It's draining, it's taxing, it's harmful, it paralyzes you, it makes you to doubt yourself. And it's difficult to wear off or to fight off the onslaughts of life or other people when they attack you unfairly. And it's difficult to assert yourself on your life and your environment, and to stand up for yourself and to be kind to yourself and care for yourself. So the self-esteem is there to protect you as a person, to preserve you, to bring out the best in you. Just like we drink immune boosters to be healthy so that we don't become ill.
Yes.
So we risk becoming ill through that inner critic being so overly dominant in our heads that it breaks us literally down in terms of our mental health, and it can make us ill, and we have less tolerance for whatever challenges and problems we have, to pace ourselves and to buffer it and to protect ourselves and to keep standing strong.
Yeah.
The inner voice
So
breaks
is
that
it also
down.
kind of like, having that shield and blocking all this negativity out kind of thing?
Yes, it should be a balance always. We should recognize our strengths, our beauty, our achievements, Yet we should also level with ourselves and be truthful and recognize our shortcomings, our drawbacks, our challenges. What is a stretch for me? And we should embrace that we need to develop ourselves constantly, heal ourselves constantly, check in with ourselves. Where can I improve? Where can I better? And in terms of what can I grow? And what do I need to overcome and heal from and get closure from, so that I can move on positively and be well and be healthy.
Yeah. There's just something that I would like to ask. I know, we haven't put those questions on for you, but I would just like to know, is there also kind of like room for critic itself?
Definitely, it's healthy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you are egoistic, you're arrogant,
Exactly.
and
Yes.
you have like a fixed mindset. I don't need to grow. I don't need to change. Take me as I am.
Yeah.
Those excuses
balance needs to be
and
there. Yeah.
justification we make. So we really need to reckon with our shortcomings,
Yes.
and we don't have to punish ourselves. That is what inner critic does, that negative self voice. We need to recognize it and say, okay, let me get my hands dirty and work on my mental health and
Yes.
put in the sweat, and let me build skills to improve myself. Let me reflect. Let me reframe. Let me be truthful with me, and let me take care of myself. And taking care of myself is to develop a positive, balanced inner voice. Not an overly confident, arrogant voice, and also not a harmful, negative, judgmental voice. So the name of our game in psychology is balance.
Yes, absolutely. And then, Edwina, in conclusion, how can you deal with inner critic?
Reflect and be aware of your thoughts. Be aware what that voice inside of you says. And we always promote positive affirmations. And you also need to do reality checks. You need to test what you think and believe, and in terms of what your environment says, the feedback that you get. You also need, like in your industry, to verify the source that you are checking the reality against, whether that source is credible. Can you trust that source?
Yes.
Is the source objective? Those thoughts that you have, are they objective? Is it your own voice? Is it true to you? And if you feel confused, you need to talk it through, and you need to check in with a trusted source, in a trusted person. And you can read up, and you need to do your homework and research. The things that I tell myself, is this healthy? Is it normal? Is it constructive? Is it helpful? Does it uplift me?
Yes.
Does it aid me to heal and grow? Does it positively contribute and change my life? And does it alter my relationships in a good way? And when do I need to walk away from my own most inner destructive critic? And when do I need to listen and say, okay, I have to admit, I can't be in denial. Let me see how I can better myself. So those are some of the things that I can recall now.
Kind of like face it and
Face
deal
it
with it.
and honestly and truthfully ruminate on it, reflect on it, and ask yourself, what advice would I give the next person in this situation that I deeply respect and care for and love? So we are talking about self-love and examining the evidence, and replace that overly critical voice and try to have a more objective and balanced voice. An overly positive voice will also not serve you any justice.
Yes.
So accept there should be a balance. There should be, like we say, always growth and improvement. And we have tough love also with ourselves. But when the inner voice is too critical, it becomes self-destructive. And we have a tendency to self-destruct as human beings. And life in itself is very, very tough. And we are very harsh because of, like, we often go into the survival mode, like I said. So what we preach is tender love and care. Self-love, that doesn't mean that you should be in denial of your drawbacks and keep on working on your mental health and improving yourself as a human being.
Yeah.
And believe me, I've tried. There's no perfect
Yes.
person.
Absolutely. And just to put it bluntly, look after yourself.
Exactly. Love yourself.
Yeah. Edwina, I thank you so much for joining us on the FeelCast. We'll speak to you again soon, and you can tune in again next time as Edwina returns to talk about the effects, causes, symptoms, and more on postpartum depression. Ciao.